Hey there, it's Patrick Davidson, the expat animator. Today's video is going to be a little different. As some of you know, I create Skillshare classes, and one of the classes I recently created was an animation of my superhero Trip punching another guy, and the class was showing the action of the punch and how to fix it. And what I didn't realize, the class got denied because of the violence that's within the animation of the punching. So I thought about it and I decided I was going to just post the whole class here for free on YouTube. So this video is going to be a little bit longer than normal, but it's the class in its entirety. And if you know my classes, I like to use the program Rough Animator. It's $5, runs on pretty much any platform. And with that, you can complete this class. So without wasting any more time, let's just get into the class. And thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully have some more videos up soon. Thanks. Do you want to learn how to animate action shots by hand, like this punching superhero? If so, then you should take a look at this class. This class will teach you how I animate action shots using 2D or hand-drawn animation. We will go over techniques like anticipation, timing, adding action lines, and follow-through. For our class project, you will be animating your own 1 to 2 second action shot using stick figures. We will be reviewing one of my animated shots of a superhero punch and using it for reference to see what to do and what not to do when animating your own shots. Let's get into this class. Welcome to this class on superhero action. I want to show you first off the shots that I animated. One is a punch. Let's pull that up here. And I want to kind of explain how my thought process is when I'm animating these things. So let's go ahead and just play this clip a couple of times. So if we take a look at this animation, what we see here is there's 2 punches being thrown. 1, 2. And if I play that again, and you can see it's only a 2-second clip here. So we're getting a lot of action in a short amount of time. And so you can see the shot starts out and nothing really happens for the first quarter second or something. We're just holding this shot so that people can see what's going to happen before it happens. And then we get a little bit of a wind up here. So there's the wind up, and then another little twisting of the wrist, just a subtle movement. And then we start into the wind up of the first punch. And then he socks him in the stomach, and we get the other guy bending over. And then you can see it's holding here for a few frames here. So the action will happen fast with relatively a little amount of frames, and then there's periods where you want to hold your animation. And you're really not holding for that long. You know, in some cases it's only 10 frames or half a second or a second. But this is where you'll work out your timing. So after the first punch, then his arm kind of cocks back in a few frames, and then he starts throwing the new punch and lands the new punch. And then you can see after he lands the punch, then we get the reaction of the other guy, and then there's a few frames of a follow-through. So you can see his arm kind of following through. And if I were to reanimate this, I probably would add another drawing right in between this frame and this frame as like a blur frame where the arm is actually blurring through the frame because it's happening so fast. So that's something I'm going to actually draw in this class. And then the guy falls off the screen. So let's play this a couple more times real quick here. 1 punch, 2 punch. One more time. 1 punch, 2 punch. So I think there's only about 17 or 18 drawings in here. We're going to delve into the actual amount of illustrations to accomplish those 2 punches. So some of the things we're going to be going over are key poses. So this might be a key pose. It's the ending pose. The first pose is going to be a key pose. So we have our starting pose, our ending pose, and maybe somewhere right about here, that might be a key pose where it's the last pose before the punch starts getting thrown. And then right about there, that's a key pose where the punch has been landed. So imagine your key poses are the most important drawings of the animation, and then we're going to go back in and make our in-betweens. And then that might be right about here, here, right about here, that's another key pose. And then, you know, the contact is a key pose. And then there's our final drawing. That's another key pose. So maybe 4 or 5 key poses in this shot. But more drawings than that, as we'll see. These are all things that will make your animation your own. And you'll kind of find what you like and what you don't like when you're animating your own drawings and action scenes. And the combination of these features, hesitation, anticipation, timing, key poses, these are all things that come together and give your animation your own style. So that's why I want to talk about these things and show you how I used them. And then we're going to go over in the class project and actually animate a shot that we can all do together. Usually, when it comes to fast action, the shots are very short. And it's a lot of work, animation and drawing-wise, to achieve a short little clip. But those, to me, are the funnest clips to work on. So let's go ahead and get started in Rough Animator. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Rough Animator. I'm going to click a new project here. And I've been using 30 frames a second. I know a lot of people use 24 frames a second for animation, but lately I've been combining animation with video. My video has been shot at 30 frames a second. So I'm going to go ahead and use 30 frames a second here and launch that. Zoom out a little so I can see my canvas. And let's go ahead and import that video clip. And let's go ahead and pick the punch clip. Okay, so our clip is in, and we can see it here on the timeline. What I want to do here is I want to pull my timeline horizontal zoom back and see the whole clip. So we're looking at 1 second right here, and then we go about 6 frames beyond 1 second. So this is a really quick clip that we're going to be dealing with. And I kind of want to just walk us through every single frame of this. So if I use my right arrow key, I can click through and look at each frame. Okay, so we held for the first drawing here for 5 frames. So what I want to do for this, I want basically a whole nother layer on top of this. So let's go to Modify Layers, and we're going to click on Duplicate Layer Timing to Blank Drawings. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a whole nother layer on top. And I'm gonna just rename this one New, and I'll call this Original. Okay, and then I want to delete this layer 1 here, and we'll delete that layer. Okay, so now we just got a background, the original video clip, and then our new animation right here. So with our new layer here, you can see it's frame by frame matched up with the layer beneath, with the original video beneath it. And as I click through here, the drawing hasn't moved, but once I get to this frame, there's our first movement. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through on top of all of these and just trace like a skeleton frame on top of what we've done. And that's going to give us a jumping board to visualize what's going on with the animation. So I'm going to get the brush tool. I'm going to pick like a red here, and I'm just going to trace our guy. And if imagining I can see his skeleton is basically what I'm doing. His hips, I like to draw the hip line leg there, arm here up to the hand, arm here, and then we know the hand's back here somewhere, right? We just can't see it. Now this frame is going to hold for 5 frames. So I'm just going to add 5 frames here, but you can see it's added these frames that we don't need at the end here. So I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to delete some of these drawings. There, now we're synced up again. And now I've got my red drawing on top. And we're not going to worry about the guy getting punched. I'm just paying attention to the guy doing the punching. So this frame, let's go ahead and draw another one here. Draw the head, the shoulders, the hips, spine, arm, hand, leg. Okay. Now this frame, let's see how, so that actually just holds for 1 frame. Because you can see, watch the hand here, the hand will move from frame to frame here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's put the hips in, spine, leg, arm, hand. Okay. Now let's check this. Now that holds. So let's go ahead and hold that frame. And then here we've got different drawing here. So as we come up, you can kind of see so if you want to do this as well to follow along, you can. I'm going to go ahead and speed this process up until I get all the way through. But remember that as we go through, if the drawing holds, we're going to just hold, we're going to add the drawing duration as we go. So what you'll notice about action is you usually get a drawing every frame or every 2 frames. So this last drawing holds all the way to the end. So let's go ahead and hold like that. Now we've got all these extra frames here from the original drawing. So I'm just going to select the last one and delete until I get rid of those. One more. Okay, so now you can see we're all synced up. Now what I want to do is I want to turn off the visibility of the first layer and I want to play this and see what it looks like. So you can see a rough outline or skeleton of what the animation is going to be like. And that's usually how I start my animation scenes in general, or especially my action scenes. So the next thing I want to do is I want to pick out where I think are the keyframes. So we're basically working backwards so that we can understand what the process is of making your own animation. So let's rename this skeleton because I want to make a new layer on top of it. So let's modify layer. Let's do the same thing. Duplicate layer timing to blank drawings. And now you can see where there was 2 frame hold, it's a 2 frame hold. Where there's a 5 frame hold, there's a 5 frame hold. So that's kind of a good little trick to use within Rough Animator to keep your drawings in sync from layer to layer. Let's do this. I'm going to pick my keyframes and then I'm just going to write, let's pick a different color here. Go ahead and pick blue. I'm just going to write the word key on a keyframe. So that's a keyframe because that's where we're starting. And then I think either here or here is a keyframe. Probably here, because here is more of the action starting. So that's a keyframe for me. So I'm going to write key here. And then that's probably keyframe because that's where the hit is happening. Now he's winding up for the next hit. And so I might think that's a keyframe right around there. And now right here, he's starting to throw the punch. So this could be a keyframe here too. I'm just gonna put that there. And here comes, and the swing. And again, there's that missing, right from here to here, there's that missing sweep where, let me turn on my onion skin. Well, I'm on the wrong layer here. So from here to here, we're missing this sweep. You know, there should be some of that blur coming through here. And let's go ahead. So we've got the hand here that now swoops from here. It was here and now it's here. So we've done this whole movement. It's been a very fast punch. And this last one's going to be our keyframe, as that's our last hold. So now my question is, how many keyframes do we have? So let's go back and count them. So let's start from the beginning here. So we've got one there. Let me turn onion skin off. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got 6 keyframes. Now, something that you'll notice here, if you look at the timeline, there's a keyframe basically every time there's more than a single frame hold. So we've got a keyframe here, there's 1, here's 2, and that's holding for 2. Here's 3, that's holding for 4 frames. That's only holding for a frame, but that's a keyframe. Here's a 2-framer, and then all the way here at the end, and that's holding through the end. So with the exception of this one that I thought was a keyframe here, and maybe it is, maybe it's not, because it's pretty close to this one, which I thought is a keyframe. But I'm basically holding more time on my keyframes. So if I were to start this scene from scratch, I would basically want to draw my keyframes. And in this case, I got about 6 keyframes. So I would just draw my 6 keyframes of what I knew the action needed to have in it. And then once you've got your keyframes drawn, what you do is you go in and you start drawing your in-betweens. And that helps flesh out the smoothness of the animation. In this case, so I've got one here, another one here, another one here. And you can see as I go through my in-betweens, one thing you'll notice is that poses sometimes look kind of wonky, or they don't look that great. And it's because they're not the key pose. They're not an important pose. They're kind of an in-between pose is what they're called. It's kind of the motion in between, and it never really looks as good as the key pose or the master pose that you're picking to show the importance of the movement. So these in-betweens, they're similar to the key pose that came before it, and they're kind of joining in between the 2 key poses. You're getting these drawings in here. Here, let's look at these 3. So there's 1, 2, 3. So as we go from this keyframe to this keyframe, I added 3 in-between drawings. And none of them particularly look that great as poses on their own, but they're filling in the gaps in between my keyframes. That's kind of how they came up with the name keyframes and in-betweens. It's exactly what they are. So let's go back to that blurring image that I drew. If I were to fix this animation, which I probably should have done, I would add in another drawing right in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I know I need a drawing in between here where the hand is here and the next frame where his hand is way over here. So there's a lot of movement that happened, and the best way to show that movement, because it's such a long distance in a short period of time, is with some blur. So let's take this frame and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off, let's see. Okay. So I know that I need some blurring going on right here with the drawing. So I might just take my brush and add some action lines. That looks like I drew it on the wrong frame, but there's a quick fix for that. If you look up here, if I hit this, it's going to move it back to where it needs to go. There. So we go from here. Now we got a little blur frame, and then we got the actual hit. And let's see if that actually helps when we play this through. So I think it actually helps, and it was just a couple of action lines with the pencil drawing that we added to a specific point where we knew we were missing something. And I may take this into Photoshop, this one drawing, and add some blur to it or something, but I think it kind of works on its own as is. And there's a good example of why blurring your images can help, especially within action shots like this punching shot that we're dealing with today. Let's look at this layer here where we can see our skeleton again. You can see here I've got a lot holding here. It says 10 frames holding on this final keyframe. And then up here at the beginning we've got 5 frames. So those are our 2 longest holds of the shot, and you'll notice they're at the beginning and the end. So it gives us something to look at before the action happens, almost like a sandwich. You get 2 pieces of bread and then you got everything in the middle. So, I could have held this front 5 frames even longer, but it's how much time you want to look at it before you get to the action. The next thing I want to talk about here is follow through. So as we get to the second punch here, this second punch, as he comes through, right about here, he's made the hit. Maybe right here, he's made contact. And then this drawing here, and this drawing here, and this drawing here is the arm following through the punch. He doesn't just hit a brick wall and his hand stops. He punches and it keeps going through. So follow through is some action after the main impact point. And it's important to make things look believable, whether it's a punch, a kick, a jump, all types of action. You want to pay attention to your follow through. So the order that you build your animation up from the ground up is important, especially when you're thinking about your workflow. I like to get all of my keyframes, my in-betweens, my timing, and hesitation, follow-through, all of that, I like to figure that out in this skeleton view where I've basically just drawn the bones of my character. And the reason for that is if I'm fleshing out every drawing as I go, it's taking me a lot longer. So I basically get the timing and everything done in these quick little stick figure drawings, and then I can come back and build up from there. The next portion of this class, I'm going to take you through how I do this from stick figure all the way through to colored final. Let's talk about building up animation. These are the steps that I use to go from the stick figures, where I figure out my timing, all the way to finished colored animation drawings. So I went ahead and did one drawing starting from the stick figure, and we're going to take it all the way through to final colors. So basically I've got a layer and I'm calling it stick figure, and I basically just show myself where the head is, the hands, the hips, the shoulders, and the spine. And that kind of is all I really need to get my action figured out and my timing in the stick figure phase. So once I've got all my timing and everything looks good with the stick figure animation, I'll go ahead and make a new layer and I'll call it shapes. And if I pull up the shapes here and I pull down the stick figure, you can see even without the spine here, you can see he's starting to get fleshed out
and you can see the superhero coming more to life. Then I'll make another layer on top of that, and I'll call it rough drawings. And in the rough drawings stage, I basically take the shapes and flesh out a little more of what the drawing is going to look like. From my rough drawings, then I will make another layer on top of that, and I'll call it cleanups. And in my cleanups, basically, you can see I've chosen a thinner line weight, a little more crisp drawing here, and I get more into the detail and all of the, like the belt and details of the suit here. And then what I would do with the cleanups is I would actually duplicate that layer. So I'll go modify layers, duplicate layer, and when I click that, it'll create a new layer on top, and I'll rename that colors. And then what I can do is I'll basically take my paintbrush tool and start filling in the colors of the cleaned up drawings. And over here in the tool options, you might want to adjust your fill expand, and I like fills behind because that fills behind the line work. So here I'll show you a quick example here. If I were just going to fill in my cleanups, there. And if I zoom in here, you can see it's a nice clean fill. Now, that's because I've already predetermined my fill expand at 5 pixels. But if I were to take that down to 0 and I try and do it again, see I get these white edges here. I'm not totally filling it in perfectly. And if I go too high on the fill expand, like 20 for say, it just goes way over the line. So remember when you're using the paint bucket tool and you're filling in your colors that you check your fill expand, you figure out a good number for you. In this case, I like 5. And we want to be on the fills behind selection. And then once you've got your drawing colored, this frame is basically ready to go. So the only other thing to do is you can composite this drawing by adding in a background layer or adding in other elements like another character or props that might be in the shot. So that's basically how I will build up my animation. And remember, I stay at the stick figure phase to get all my timing figured out. And even going through that, you might still get to the finished colored animation and still not like it because something's missing. Well, you can always go back in and add a frame here or there to clean up your animation. All right, you made it. It's time for the class project. What I want you to do for your class project is to animate a 1 to 2 second shot, an action shot, with the stick figures. And that'll help you figure out your timing, your pacing, your hesitation, all the things we talked about. And, you know, a 1 or 2 second shot, that's a maximum of like 30 to 60 drawings. So don't get too intimidated having to do 30 drawings of a stick figure. Congratulations on completing this class, but we're not done quite yet. Let's recap what we've just learned. Today, we learned how to animate a short action shot using stick figures. We went over important issues like hesitation, anticipation, timing, key poses, and how those elements can help make your own style. Remember, the more you animate, the quicker your personal style will emerge. By dissecting one of my own animated punching shots, we were able to learn more about the following: keyframes and in-betweens, using action lines or motion blur to fix fast action shots, hold your beginning and end frames, importance of follow-through, using stick figures to figure out your timing, building up your animation, including stick figures, shapes, rough drawings, cleanup drawings, colors, and compositing. Thank you for taking my class today. I hope you were able to learn something valuable. This has been Patrick Davidson, the Expat Animator. See you next time.